down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and yes, we are back in the studio. The studio is back to 100%. I know anybody who followed me on social media, they all knew about it because I tweeted it from the tops of the trees, and I Facebooked it from the bottoms of the depths of hell or wherever else I wanted to be. I had to let everybody know we are back to what would be considered about as close to normal as we can possibly get here at the studio. I have to admit, trying to put together quick remote sessions like I did, it was kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting. I've decided based on that experience that I'm going to put together kind of a go bag that will have the parts and pieces needed rather than tearing apart my standard setup here in order to get things done. I'm going to have a second set of things so that if necessary, I can jump on and, grab the bag, go run out, go do a broadcast or something remote and, try and get everything done that way, rather than messing around and trying to do it last minute. All right. A couple of things. I see some new people in the chat. I wanted to, new to me. Okay. So first of all, let me just say you guys might've come in the past, and I may not have seen you, but I'm going to give you some hollers right now if I can get this to stop scrolling on me. All right, first up. Oh, wait. I'm not on the right screen. All right, so first up is Debbie over on Facebook. Debbie Sokalski. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. Hello. She said, hi, Whiskey. Hey, Whiskey. And we've got Sharon 1353 over here on the Rumble side. Hey, Whiskey Musings. Thank you. Thank you for joining. And of course, all of my Whiskey Warriors, I do appreciate everything that you guys do. The thing about it is that Mark brought this up on the interview that I did, 3 episodes ago. So do yourself a favor, go back and listen to that interview. But Mark brought this up, and what he said was absolutely true. You guys, and I experience it both ways. So just so you know, you need to understand that when you watch something on a regular basis, you kind of get tied to it. So things like watching the Mark K show on a regular basis, when Mark doesn't stream, it tends to put his fans into a bit of a doldrum because, of course, I hate to say this word, but it is what it is. It's an addiction. It's an addiction to listen. It's just like with Rush Limbaugh or Mark Levin or Dan Bongino or any of those, the daily broadcasts. You get those and you miss it when it's not there. Well, on the opposite side of the camera, and again, I'm speaking from experience because I've got both sides here, but on the opposite side of the camera, I get just as much of a high broadcasting to all of you guys. And when I can't broadcast, I miss it. And honestly, it's because of you. I like to see all of you in the chat. I may not respond all the time. I may not be the one to always say, hello or whatever, but believe me, I notice when you're missing. I'll notice things, from all of these things. I notice it. I try to notice all of these, the little idiosyncrasies, because when I don't see people in the chat, I kind of sit and scratch my head and wonder, geez, I hope they're okay. I hope, things are going all right, or that that they've had time or that nothing serious happens. I know a few of my Whiskey Warriors, they have told me that they have a hard time coming in and seeing things in the chat or seeing the show live. And I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, though, just the fact that I see I see you guys. I just want you guys to know that I see you guys, and you guys are as much of an addiction for me to broadcast as it is for you to come and watch me do what I do, sometimes make a fool of myself, so on and so forth. So anyway, all right. Excuse me. So what am I drinking tonight? Day asks, well, I went back to, I gotta be honest with you, Bonnie, you're going to be happy with me on this one. I'm doing the Four Roses single barrel Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. And this has rapidly moved into what I would call the top spot now. It's actually, kicked out. It actually has kicked out my, Irish, Black Barrel, Jameson Black Barrel. So anyway, all right. All right. And right. And Day, you're right. I did forget you were poll watching for 3 weeks, but I noticed that you were not there. So be happy with that. Okay. Anyway. All right. So it looks like I've got a lot of people here. This past week and a half has been such a roller coaster, but I can tell you this much, that we had a couple of really somber days, celebrative days, of course, but also somber days this week. The first one being, of course, on the 10th. I didn't get a chance to say this 100%. I didn't even put it out on my social media, but believe me, I know it. November 10th is the Marine Corps birthday, 247 years. Semper Fidelis to all of the devil dogs out there. I do appreciate you, even though I'm an old, Army person myself. So I do appreciate you and appreciate everything that you have done in service to your country. And then we also have Veterans Day, which, of course, as you can see right here, I have my in honor of our veterans and the background. Let me get out of the way so that you guys can see this. It's basically a flag that's kind of showing through in a bird-ish fashion. It looks more like somebody just sort of splashed something on the screen, but anyway. Veterans are very important. I don't think anybody really understands. I kind of posted this on the social media, but I don't think anybody really fully grasps the importance of what a veteran decides to do when they first sign up. And, it was one time somebody told me that, it has to be kind of scary when you really think about it. And I'll be honest with you, at 19, when I signed up, I didn't really think about what I was doing necessarily. But the fact remained that the minute that you sign those papers, and believe me, the only other time that I've signed my signature or my initials at least as many times, or possibly even, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. There's so many papers and stuff that you have to sign when you essentially sign your life over to the government, that, that process that you go through, you don't really think about it at the time, especially when you're young, but it is true. You actually have signed a blank check over to the United States government, payable in the amount of up to and including your life. And even though there are some that have served during peacetime and haven't actually gone to, war zones or whatever, you're still at the very heart and at the very bottom, you're still an infantryman, a grunt or whatever. I mean, everybody goes through the same basic skills training. Everyone goes through the same, basic and boot camp style training. Everybody does. We not necessarily inter-service, but all Army people go through the same basic training. All Marines go through the same boot camp. And at the very heart, you are essentially an infantry person. or a line person, whatever. I can't remember what the Marines call them. But the point is here is that a lot of people don't really fully understand what that means. And when you see people who come back from wartime situations, whether they have physical attributes that have been changed due to a injury that they have sustained within combat, or whether they come back with only the mental and internal emotional scars, they all need our help. Every single one needs help. Now, when I transitioned, because I hadn't gone to war or anything like that, when I transitioned, I generally tend to think it was fairly easy. And you also need to understand, too, that there is actually a transition going from being basically told 24/7 what you can and can't do. You have inspections, you've got routines. You spend your entire life going through an entire process. And, even though you'll have time off and stuff like that, you do get, it's not, I say 24/7 only because you have to be ready 24/7. But, the reality is that generally speaking, especially when it's not wartime, you essentially have the a fairly normal day. I mean, you kind of get up, you have to get up early and go to PT. In some cases, that's physical training. For those that don't know, you go and you work out, and then you come back and you get ready. And then for me, like, I headed off to the motor pool and then worked up until lunch. And then we went off to lunch. You could either go to the chow hall or you could go, wherever you wanted to. You had an hour, generally speaking. You came back to the motor pool and you worked until, roughly, 4:30. And then you headed back to your barracks or you headed home. And then, of course, 5 o'clock came, you saluted the flag, that kind of thing every single day. And that was a Monday through Friday thing generally. But in my case, there were times that I went out into the field to practice my specialty. And, we would spend 2-3 weeks out in the field, under somewhat grungy conditions, showers only every 3 days, those kinds of things. So, that was gearing us up for battle. And for me, that was essentially my day for the 4 years that I was in. Or actually, I should say my week during the 4 years that I was in. But there's times where people go into such places that they have a hard time talking about it. They have a hard time relating back to what essentially the real world, we see as the normal world. And when that happens, we need to be there to support them. Now, there's one member, and I don't think he's on right now. In fact, I haven't seen him yet, but there's one member of our Whiskey Warrior family that actually has taken that to the next level. I mean, everybody pretty much says, hey, I'm here if you need me. But for him, he actually takes it to the next step. And he works with an organization. It's a loosely based organization called Vets Helping Vets. And basically what it is he volunteers some time to help connect vets with the VA, to help them in their transition into the civilian sector. And he also, as a part of that, offers an open ear to any veteran that's coming back who just needs to talk about some of the things that they've seen and done and that kind of stuff. So I want to give out a huge shout out. He's over on Rumble. He hangs out with us on the Mark K Show, Rumble chat. I want to give a shout out on the show here to Jay Monty. Now, I tried to get him on the program to talk about what he does, to talk about maybe some of the things that he has seen. Unfortunately, he just went through some surgery and is recovering from that. And so we kind of touched base a little bit earlier on this week. I think that he's recovering. So I feel like it's a good thing that that's what he's doing. He obviously has to get better, and we certainly hope that he's doing so much better than what he was before. But again, I got to give a shout out to the man because he's doing something where most people just talk. He's actually doing. And, you hear, especially in today's day and age, you hear so many people who talk about things and they talk about what they're going to do and they never follow through. And like Dan Bongino says, the do matters. And in this particular case, what he is doing, even just the small bit that he feels like he's doing, the do absolutely does matter. And on Veterans Day in particular, everybody kind of, says, oh, thank a vet and we thank all military members and everything else. But as I've said before, especially on Memorial Day, you need to understand there are 3 special days that are set aside within our year that are specifically for certain sectors of the military. For the ones that are currently serving active, it's Armed Forces Day. For the ones who have paid the ultimate price and have written that or have signed that check and that check got cashed to the full amount is Memorial Day. Veterans Day is for those who are still here but are not serving active. And if you happen to see somebody who's a vet, it makes people feel good. Just go up and say thank you. Now, a lot of vets, I'm going to tell you, I myself and Jay Monty and some of the rest, I mean, we are a group of people who we don't necessarily look at it as, the thank you being necessary. We did what we did for what we did, and why we did it is our own personal beliefs and sacrifices. But at the same time, considering how many people came back from the Vietnam War in particular and were treated so badly, even the draftees, the people who went not because they were inclined to do so on their own, but the ones that were compelled to go. Those folks, they essentially got a really poor response from the American public. Now, I understand, the times, the history, and the fact that that particular police action, because it wasn't really a war, but that particular police action was very unpopular with the public. But at the same time, especially now, you'll hear people say things like, I support the troops, but I don't support the war. And it's that distinction that I think we need to make sure that we are clear about. That you don't necessarily have to go with the politics that create the problem, but to be able to go and actually thank the people for their service, regardless of what they were required to do, but to be able to thank them for their service because they literally did what most people refuse to do, which is sign a blank check, basically saying that it is up to and including my life until such time as either the check becomes voided by the government, meaning that you've separated, or you actually end up paying in some fashion for the work that you have done. And it's unfortunate that we have situations where people do end up getting that check cash all the way and even part of the way. But we need to be respectful of those folks coming back, because you do not know until you are in that situation. You really do not know what they have gone through. And some people are able to talk about it and kind of tell you a little bit about it, but you're still not fully grasping what's going on. But at the same time, there's also those that literally can't talk about it. And it's very troubling to think that our government is not supporting these people with every single available resource that they have. They say they're trying, and the VA, has taken a lot of bad knocks. But to understand that, our government should be giving them 100% everything that they need. They should not have to want for anything, especially if they come back not only wounded mentally, but also wounded physically. They should not have to ask. They should not have to be on the chopping block. That should be a no-brainer by our politicians to make sure that all of these people get taken care of to the fullest extent and the fullest ability that the resources that are available to the United States are allowed. Because at one time, those people put up 100%. The government can do that too. All right. So I see some things going on there, but let's go on. Let's move to the next topic that I want to talk about. And I promised that I would do this. We know that it's coming up. All of the patriots know that it's coming up, but I want to take a moment and put a shout out to the where did I do this? Here we go. To the Mark K. Ho Ho Hold'em Charity Poker Tournament. It is on Thursday, December 1st. They only have a couple of tables left. They only have a couple tables left and some tickets left. You can get tickets. I'll show you that here in just a minute. But this is probably one of the best charities and charity causes that I think I've seen in terms of how much money goes directly to the kids. I mean, most of the time, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of these charities, they have a lot of overhead. And Mark kind of pulled this out during the interview, is that a lot of these charities have a lot of overhead. They have a lot of costs involved with doing what they do. The Dreams Come True organization that Mark partners with this, they put 90%, better than 90% of every dollar that goes in, 90 cents of it goes directly to the kids. They only take roughly 10, I think it's 9 or 10% for their costs. And so this is an incredible organization. It's kind of like the Make-A-Wish Foundation in a way, but it is local to Jacksonville, Florida. So I don't want anybody to, think that they're helping people necessarily across the United States. However, if they can keep making it successful, who knows? The Dreams Come True organization might actually spread out and start opening up in other places. Okay. But we should go to kayskids.org. That's KAYES KADIS, or sorry, KIDS, K's Kids, KAYES KIDS. God, I'm having a hard time. .org, and go and take a look and see. They've got some information out there like this one here. What the heck happened? Why did it disappear on me? Oh, sorry about that. Hold on. I'm trying to find it here. Here we go. And so, yeah, so this is what they do. They deal with kids that are battling life-threatening illnesses, and they get, they ask them their dream, and they go ahead and they buy it for them, or they get it for them. And then on the 12 days of Christmas, which will be coming up here in December after the Ho Ho Hold'em tournament, they bring the kids in for 12 days prior to Christmas to give them the gifts and to have them on the air. And it is just the cutest little thing. These, I've watched this the last couple of years, and all of these kids, they come in and they're just the greatest. I mean, they speak nice. They're polite. They are very thankful for what they get. And they seem like they don't even really know what kind of life-threatening illness that they have. Either that, or they've decided that they're just going to live their life the way that it is. And so anyway, the point being is, go there, donate. In fact, you can go and donate. If you look right down here, let me see if I can do this. If you look right here where the orange, it doesn't show. It's, I would like to make an additional donation. you can put in a donation amount there. And I'm telling you, it's a really, really good charity. It's a great organization, and they carry things through. They push things through. I mean, it's just great. I trust Mark. I trust what he does, and they've been doing this for several years now. And, they set this up. Just even if you can donate just like $5 or something coming in for Christmas, doesn't have to be a lot. Just put in, $5, $10, something a little extra. Maybe instead of buying that god-awful Starbucks coffee or whatever that costs $15, put that $15 to good use, or put in $10 and buy a $5 cup of drip or something. Rather than that frou-frou drink that you buzz in the in the machines and everything else. But, go and do a donation. Believe me, it does really great work. And then, of course, watch the K's Kids 12 Days of Christmas. And then he also does a Christmas in July thing as well, which is another 12 days, 10 or 12 days that he does there. All right. So now let's get on to the rest of the program. I kind of missed doing this last Saturday. So let's go ahead and get this going. And let's talk about on this day in American history. And this is kind of an interesting little section. So, of course, we are reading from the American Patriots Almanac. It is an awesome book by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. The current one that's out is the second edition. I believe it's been revised and updated. You can buy this at booksellers for roughly around $20. And it has a lot of stories, things that have to deal with America, and there's a lot of other information as well, but it has little daily bits and bytes about American history. And I read it every Saturday, or I try to read it every Saturday for the show. So here we go. On November 12th, what is an American? When French-American J. Hector St. John de Courvoisier, oh boy, I am going to mincemeat this last word. His last name, I'm sorry, I just can't pronounce it. Died on November 12th, 1813. He left behind a vivid portrait of life on the 18th century American frontier. Hector St. John had emigrated to the New World in 1755 and eventually settled on a farm in New York. His impressions, published in England in 1782 as Letters from an American Farmer, still offers insights about the American character. What then is the American, this new man? He is an American who, leaving behind him all his ancient prejudices and manners, receives new ones from the new mode of life he has embraced, and the new government he obeys, and the new rank he holds. He becomes an American by being received on the broad lap of our great alma mater. Here, individuals of all nations are melted into a new race of men, whose labors and posterity will one day cause great changes in the world. Americans are the Western pilgrims who are carrying along with them that great mass of arts, sciences, vigor, and industry, which began long since in the East. They will finish the great circle. The American ought, therefore, to love this country much better than that wherein either he or his forefathers were born. Here, the rewards of his industry follow with equal steps the progress of his labor, without any part being claimed either by a despotic prince, a rich abbot, or a mighty lord. The American is a new man who acts upon new principles. He must therefore entertain new ideas and form new opinions. From involuntary idleness, servile dependence, penury, and useless labor, he has passed to toils of a very different nature, rewarded by ample subsistence. This is an American. Wow. You know, I think I'm going to have to find the the book letter or the publishment, all of the published letters from an American farmer from this guy. It's spelled his last name is spelled Crevecoeur. Wow. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but that is just an amazing, amazing story for tonight. All right. Speaking of Christmas and upcoming gift giving, why not give the greatest document that has ever been put together in terms of our government, the Constitution of the United States of America. This is a Saddleback leather-bound book. You can get it at constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Take a look at that stitching. That's not your typical glue binding. That is an actual stitched binder, and it goes all the way through. This would be a great stocking stuffer for that young person who is learning about the American Constitution. And you can get them again at constitution.whiskeymusings.online. That'll take you directly to the page, and you will, by purchasing it, you will support the show in the process. So thank you for that. I do appreciate that. All right. I am attempting to get things back and into more of a semblance, a scheduled state. So my wife, you saw her on a couple of the remote episodes. I think it was the first one, episode 149. But I am putting together this weekly calendar where I'm actually trying to write things out to sort of pre-plan some of my shows. And so I just want to throw this out there and remind you that we have the Turkey Day recipe special on Saturday the 19th. So that is 1 week from tonight. So 1 week from tonight, you'll get to see my buddy. You've seen him before. He's done my last two ones. He is, we call him Captain Unicorn for various reasons. You can go and check out my earlier videos with him and understand why. But he is an amateur chef, and he loves to cook. He's got some great recipes. We're going to be going through all of that next week, next Saturday. I don't have anything on the docket for Wednesday, the 16th. So that one is probably going to be based off of whatever, current events that we have. But on Wednesday, the 23rd, so this is Wednesday right before Thanksgiving, I'm going to open up the phone lines, and I really would appreciate it if I can get Whiskey Warriors to call in for what are you thankful for? And I'm going to open up the phone lines and do that for Wednesday night's show. And then, of course, after that, I don't have a whole heck of a lot planned. I do know that in December, not the first episode in December, but the second episode in December actually lines right up with Pearl Harbor Day. So I will have some stuff for you on Pearl Harbor for that as well. Okay. So we had a wonderful, and thank you, Outlaw Dogs. I do appreciate that. That is great. It's a milestone for sure. It's a milestone. Oh, believe me, Day, I will have the number posted. You will see it. Mark K Show, original Mark K Show style. It will be there. I've actually been practicing the telephone number. I've been practicing it so I can bring it out every break, every conversation, whatever. So anyway, okay. And Buddy also mentions this. Has everyone taken the survey? I did have a survey. I will say I have 17. I'll have to figure out where to post it because I don't think I have it. But I have 17 responses. That's okay. I think I'm all right with that. But if you happen to get the link from one of the other shows or something, you can, or even my social media, you can go and take that. I'll leave it open for a little while. With questions about where I'm going. All right. So normally for Veterans Day, the President of the United States goes to Arlington National Cemetery. Now, I personally have not been there yet. However, it is on my bucket list to do, and especially to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And I mean, my understanding of Arlington is just that it is awe-inspiring. And the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the changing of the guard, all of those things are just something that I believe that every American should probably go and visit. Same thing with, going to the Vietnam Memorial and the wall and so on and so forth. And in fact, here's a couple already talking about it. She's saying she has been to Arlington. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so anyway, as I was saying, going to Arlington National Cemetery and laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, so many presidents have done that. In fact, I believe it might have been John F. Kennedy, JFK, who actually kind of started the tradition, I think. But I'm not, he might have done it at the Arizona. Now that I'm thinking about it, he actually went to the Arizona and did it at the Arizona Memorial as well. But the whole tradition of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and everything, it's, the president really should go and be thankful to all of those who have lost their lives in service to this great country. Unfortunately, Biden apparently has had a history of not necessarily putting soldiers first. I mean, we all know about him, looking at his watch when the 13 were coming back from Afghanistan. To me, that is completely and utterly disrespectful. George Bush, when soldiers would come back, it's reported that George Bush would actually cry when people came back from Afghanistan. I know for me, one of the saddest songs that I think I could ever hear is Taps. And even though they played it every night at 11 p.m., it's just to see that casket wrapped in a flag and know that there was a young person who went and gave their life for ideals that this country stands for is just, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to understand. And yes, buddy, Buddy says that Trace Atkins has a great song called Arlington. Please check it out. It's actually one of my favorites, one of my best, one of my favorites, especially from him. But let me get back to this. So I have an article in the Western Journal. It's a short one. And this is just, personally, this is just disgusting. Biden apparently decided to go over to the United Nations instead of going to Arlington and speaking on Veterans Day and recognizing veterans. And what was even worse is that while John Kerry is a Vietnam vet, okay, and obviously a friend of the administration, but what was even more embarrassing was the fact that Biden actually mentioned that John Kerry was one of the most decorated soldiers that ever came out of Vietnam. Now, we all know that Joe tends to stretch the truth a little bit, and that's putting it mildly. In other words, he actually he actually outright lies. I kind of got stuck because somebody was saying that Taps makes them cry, so I'm not the only one. But the thing about it is that as a leader of your country, as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, you should give respect to those who serve under you because of their service and their sacrifice, especially when they come home in a casket instead of hauling a rucksack on their own. You know, one of the things that is a tradition is the president saluting like his Marine guards. And the Marines have to salute, the military members have to salute the president because he is the commander in chief. But there's been some people who have suggested that the commander in chief should not necessarily salute back. And the reason being is because the commander in chief, although it is a sign of respect and acknowledgement of those people's salute. So traditionally in the military, when you have a higher ranking officer who is also in the military, they must return your salute. The only time that is ever broken in terms of the rank is if there is a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. The Congressional Medal of Honor, no matter if it's a private or a general, that person will always get saluted. And they will always, even as a civilian, get saluted. And so the whole idea that, somebody would go and snub these fine people is just abhorrent to me, totally abhorrent. And the fact that he decided to go to the United Nations and go to the climate change conference, and then of course talk about a person who, he went off to war, he won medals. I'm not putting that past him. For John Kerry in particular, I'm not putting that down on John Kerry at all. He did his time, he did his service. We thank him for it. But for Biden to go and just snub the veterans it's just really horrible to me. I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting in my thought process. I mean, I'm not a big Biden fan anyway, that's obvious. But he, for him to do this to the people that he is supposed to be in charge of, it just makes me sick. It just does. And I'm sorry, but Biden definitely did not win any points by doing that at all. Okay. So on Tuesday, we had one of the greatest service related or greatest American kind of things to do. And that is that we got to vote. Now, the sad part about this whole voting thing is the fact that we, and Buddy Weiser talks about the John Kerry being a traitor. I don't know. I mean, well, obviously he's giving us Traitor of the Ages. It's an article on the American Thinker. So you may want to go to the American Thinker website and check out the article to get the story of John Kerry. But I can tell you the guy's just a climate change fanatic. And anyway, but we had the election that happened. And what's sad about the elections is, first of all, there were several things that occurred throughout. I mean, Maricopa County lost, I think it's 20% of their 20% of the people coming in, they couldn't even vote because they had 20% machines down. They had, so many different other things in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania talked about how Pennsylvania was going to, take a long time to count things. And then all of a sudden, Fetterman obviously just, bam, he won that night. I mean, they announced it. So I don't know how stuff like that can happen. And what's even worse is places like Arizona, Nevada, and a couple other places have taken a very long time. Florida did it in one night. And I can remember as a kid, by the time you were done, I mean, you got to understand, I grew up on the West Coast. So usually by the time they got, before the polls even closed in Washington, Oregon, and California for the West Coast, they already would be announcing the president, the winner of the presidential election, before Oregon, California, and Washington even had their polls closed yet. And that used to disgust me. That used to get me irritated because it was like, how can they announce the winner when they don't even know, these three states? Well, turns out as I got older, I started to understand it had to deal with mathematics. It had to deal with, statistical analysis, so on and so forth. But But the funny thing about all of this is that we've now gone from we're able to know the night of the election to we don't even know until a week after. Now, there are certain cases, like what happened in Georgia, where neither candidate, neither Raphael Warnock nor Herschel Walker, garnered 50% of the vote. And so by state law, that immediately kicks off a runoff. Now, you might ask yourself, why would neither candidate actually get 50%? Well, the reason for that is because Georgia actually allows for third parties. So instead of having a heads up 1-to-1, Democrat versus Republican race, you have a third party involved. And so what happened was that third party took away what would have given either Warnock or Walker the final 50%. And so that's part of the reason why I keep saying that our system of government is not conducive to having a third party. As much as I would love to see a party such as the Tea Party or the strict constitutionalist party or, the super lion patriot party under the icon of, a Trump silhouette, it really isn't conducive. Our system of government is not conducive to that. And so we're kind of stuck with the idea of a two-party system. Now, it didn't used to always be that way. But because we have a winner-take-all scenario, you have to have, specific numbers of votes or something like that in order to be able to do it. Now we have several close races, very close races that are still hanging in the balance right now. Crucial contests in Alaska, California, Colorado, and Maine, as well as Arizona. Nevada just kind of got called, especially in the Senate race. Blake Masters, unfortunately, doesn't seem to be able to overcome the difference between him and his Democrat challenger. But that being said, here are some of the key midterm races. This is in the Washington Examiner. I also have a Fox News article I think I put in the show notes as well. But here's some of the key races that are, and let me go ahead and bring this up, that are still hanging in the balance. So the first one, obviously, is Alaska's House at-large district. That's traditionally a Republican seat. It was vacated by the death of Republican Don Young earlier this year. And it was captured by Democrat Mary Peltola in an upset victory over Sarah Palin. And that one still isn't quite decided yet. They have about 80% of the vote in, and they had a top. So they changed their voting system, and they have a top ranked choice voting contest. And if no candidate reaches 50% of the vote, so they have about 80% of the vote in, and Peltola is in the lead with about 47.2 at the time of this writing. Palin is trailing at 26.6, and Republican Nick Begich, or Begich, has 24.2. So as long as Peltola doesn't make 50%, there'll be a runoff. That's basically what's going on. Then Arizona, we have the governor's race. This one has about 82% of the vote that's been tallied so far, and Lake is apparently trailing Hobbs by roughly about 1%. I mean, not even, I think about a point, because it's 49.3 to 50.07. So you're looking about, 1.4 maybe, in terms of the election. And they only have 82% of the vote in. Now, Arizona Senate, Senator Mark Kelly covers 51.7 to 46.1 over Blake Masters. Now, that one, I believe, has already been called for Mark Kelly at this point. Then you have Arizona's 1st Congressional District. That one has Dave Schweikert, Jevin Hodge a razor-thin lead of 50.8 over 49.2 for David Schweikert. You have California's 47th Congressional District, which is Representative Katie Porter, who is the Democrat, and roughly 2/3 of the vote were counted at the time of this writing. And Porter has a slim lead over Scott Bowe at 50.8 versus 49.2. Then you have Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, which this one actually was really kind of surprising because Lauren Boebert is actually at early counting. She was actually behind in this race, and she has now moved forward a little bit, leading at 50.17 to 49.83. Now that one is very, very likely to head to a recount because based on Colorado law, if the final margin is 0.5% or less, they're going to head to a recount on that one. Now, the Georgia Senate, obviously, that one, like I just said, 50%, it's going to head to a runoff. That runoff has been announced to occur on December 6th. So we will not see, likely not see, because Blake Masters being essentially having his race called for the other side, that now puts us in a position where we are going to likely be back at a 50-50 with Georgia itself being the tiebreaker to go to the whoever wins control of the Senate. Now, the House, the Republicans are at 211 at last count. We need 218 in order to take control. There's some people that are saying that it's still not insurmountable for that to happen, but that it definitely was not what a lot of people were expecting. I'm kind of guessing that we will probably final the tally somewhere around 220 to maybe 225. Dan Bongino's kind of in the same boat. But you know, all we need is 218. So, and we have 7 left to go. So let's see if we can get that. So Nevada Senate, well, since they lost in Pennsylvania, so we've got Adam Laxalt, who is leading the incumbent, Catherine Masto, at 48.97 to 48%. So roughly 0.97 difference. And they have about 90% of the vote in. So that one's going to be tightening up and is very tight. Another kind of a surprise too, which, I mean, there's a 3-way tie for the race for Oregon governorship not a 3-way tie, but a 3-way race with Democrat Tina Kotek, Independent Betsy Johnson, and the Republican Christine Drazen. And right now, the Associated Press has already called the race and projected Kotek as the winner for that race. So we may not, I mean, as much as I would love to see Oregon have a Republican governor, we're probably not going to see that. Just as much as Patty Murray pretty much took over here again in Washington, which was very disappointing, especially considering the polling. But that just goes to show you polls are often wrong. But anyway, another thing that happened during the election cycle, I mean, other than these close races, is the fact that I don't know if anybody actually heard this, but the FBI, and this is an article in the town hall, but apparently the FBI sent agents to a lot of these counties. And apparently a lot of the counties that are experiencing the election issues are the same counties that these FBI people went to supposedly prevent violence and the poll watching, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is, again, disconcerting. I mean, if you want to talk about poll intimidation or election location intimidation, this is a bit of a problem, I think. And definitely, I mean, to have the FBI go there, especially considering what they have done against conservatives and the general public looking at the FBI and not trusting them at all. But anyway, so apparently on the DOJ's watch list, they had Pennsylvania's Luzerne County, Texas's Harris County, which that Harris County is Houston, Arizona's Maricopa County, surprise, surprise, and Pima County in Arizona, as well as Nevada's Washoe County. They all apparently had feds there, quote, monitoring the polls. Now, yeah, this is a notable expansion according to the article that's here in Town Hall. Nevada wasn't even on the DOJ's roster 2 years ago. And it was on the radar this time, but Pima County, the second most populous, which holds Tucson, is among the new additions. And then apparently these 5 jurisdictions, supposedly under in-person DOJ supervision throughout Tuesday, suffered major muck-ups. And here's some of the things that happened. So Luzerne County, Luzerne in Pennsylvania, had a serious supply shortage of paper for the voting machines to tabulate the ballots. In Harris County, they opened late, prompting groups to file a suit for an extra hour of voting, which was granted by a district court judge. And then the court order was then challenged by Attorney General Ken Paxton. And the Texas Supreme Court ruled that ballots cast at any of the county's 781 polls in the final hour should be placed aside for the time being. Those who arrived after the normal closing time in Texas were in line by 8, had to cast what they call provisional ballots. And those were kept separate from the original tally. So that's kind of an interesting way to handle that. I don't know what that comes in. And then, of course, Maricopa County had ballots were being misread at a number of precincts. At one point in the day, tabulators in 20% of the county's polling locations weren't working properly. That's what I was saying. According to a video statement by Maricopa County election officials. Now, one thing that I find kind of interesting about Arizona is the fact that Katie Hobbs is actually the Secretary of State. And what I really don't understand is how she was able to stay in her position as Secretary of State to oversee the elections throughout the state while running for governor of that state. To me, that kind of seems like a conflict of interest. And to me, it would seem like maybe you would recuse yourself. If you were an honorable person, you would say, hey, or better yet, say, hey, I'm still Secretary of State, but for the elections, I am using so-and-so from my office and they are, taking care of it or whatever. It just seems a little odd that, that is the case. It just seems a little odd for that, to occur. And then let's see what else. In Pima County in Arizona, the election staff cited a technology issue that temporarily caused one voting center to be shut down temporarily. And I guess the GOP lawyer Harmeet Dillon pointed out that Pima County Recorder Gabriella Kelly is even more political and less cooperative than Maricopa. So they were slow walking results, hoping to outlast legal and other observers. This kind of thing, which, by the way, I have something about Harmeet Dillon in my next article. So then in Nevada, they had a new batch of mail-in votes by the thousands, which is delaying final voting or final counting. So yeah, we're still waiting on stuff. But shoot, Florida took it over and Florida did it all taken care of. Boom, it's done. So, anyway, it's just, for the most technologically advanced society, generally speaking, in the Western world, we have so many people who are innovators, who are, able to do all of these wonderful things with technology and everything. We can't get our own crap straight, and we expect other countries to follow in our footsteps with regards to this, especially when we can't get the counting done within, a 24-hour period or whatever. I mean, this is just horrible. And speaking of that, this whole idea of mail-in voting. Now, Washington is an all mail-in vote state. Okay. All mail-in voting. The thing about it is that not very many countries actually do. I caught this off of Twitter. It was tweeted out by Jack Posobiec, and it comes from the International Institute of, and I got to read this here real quick. Sorry. The International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, the IIDEA or IDEA. They call it IDEA. But take a look at this thing. And I got to get off this other, but take a look at this map. So this map is breaking down by country, which countries actually support mail-in voting. Now, the light blue areas, which are the predominant of it, now this is data for 204 countries across the world. 80% of the world does not allow for mail-in voting. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these places, believe it or not, they're not democracies. They are monarchies or dictatorships. But the point here is that the U.S. and Canada and a couple of locations in Europe, like Iceland, looks like England, and I can't figure out the two that are actually in mainland Europe. They allow, so 5% of the world allows for mail-in voting. Okay. The rest of the world, the other 12% that's left, has it available for some voters, meaning that some voters can do it, but not everyone. And that's actually kind of the way the U.S. used to be. I mean, if you were out on military deployment, you could get an absentee ballot. If you would go and, had maybe like a serious illness or something, you could ask for a absentee ballot, a provisional absentee ballot. But generally speaking, you used to have to vote in person. And I honestly think that a big part of our screw ups that we've been having in this situation has a lot to do with the fact that we allow things like mail-in voting and no voter ID or very little voter ID. So, even the Democrats back in, I think it was 2012, a Democrat-run New York Slimes, or the New York Times, posted a piece where they were talking about how mail-in voting provides a lot of opportunity for fraud. Now, why is it that now it's okay, but back then it wasn't? Well, the reason why is because back then it was in favor of an advantage to the Republicans, because absentee voting and so on and so forth was continually mostly for service members, and service members generally tend to break about a 60, 40, 55, 45 split for conservatives and Republicans. So anyway, I think it should be a national holiday, just like everything else that we have, and that you should be assigned a voting location. You should have to sign up before 30 days out, and that you should be required to bring with you a federally issued photo ID. Now, what do I mean by that? I actually mean it should be your passport. You, as an American citizen, should automatically be issued a passport. Other countries do this. They automatically issue passports when you become an adult. And so this should be the case, is you should definitely have to go with a photo ID that is a federally issued government passport. That's how it should be. And I'm going to have to look at this. This is interesting. Go back to 1956 voting methods and procedures. I'm going to have to research that and try to figure out what 1956 actually meant across the board. Because again, constitutionally, every single state, their state legislature dictates how voting is done within that state's borders. So, yeah. So that's how it should be. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it should be either a passport or some sort of federal ID. It should be something that identifies not only that you are who you say you are, but that you're also an American citizen. And because a lot of state driver's licenses, they hand them out to just about anybody. And you can't guarantee that that person who's coming in to vote is an American citizen or not. So that's essentially where I think we should go with the voting system. We should do this moving forward. And unfortunately, like I just said, you'd have to get all 50 states on board. That's going to be a little bit difficult. State ID has its problems. You know, Redford just popped this up. State ID, it has its problems. The reason being is because, you know, you're not allowed to vote in presidential elections if you're not an American citizen or a member of like Puerto Rico. But a state ID can literally be issued to anyone, especially a driver's license can be issued to anyone who meets the criteria within that state. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be an American citizen. So that's the problem that I have with using state ID, to be honest with you. That's why I'm saying it should just be a federal ID. It should be issued. Everybody should have a passport anyway. Just like you get a birth certificate from that state, you should automatically get a passport as part of that whole thing. So, anyway, all right. So, you know, I have a couple people that are saying be interested in what 1956 voting laws or voting rules were, and why it would help. So maybe I'll do that for Wednesday. Maybe I'll put that in as a segment for Wednesday to research that and get that in. It might not be a good idea. It might not be a bad idea to do that. All right. Now, let me take a second. Take a drink. That was an awful lot to talk about. Got a few more articles here I just want to hit fairly quickly. But before I do that, I want to let you all know that I am running a gift for you on the Whiskey Musings store. You can get Whiskey Musings Broadcast, either logo gear, or I also have my famous saying of when I drink, I think, on several articles of clothing. There's mugs. There's even like a pad of paper now or a thing of paper. But here's the thing. I'm going to give you a gift. The gift is free shipping from now until Christmas Eve. All you have to do is when you order, at the end screen, when you're getting ready to pay, put in the promo code Christmas, all capital letters, spelled Christmas, spell Christmas out, all capital letters in that promo code box, and you will get free shipping. You will have free shipping. So once, to go over to store.whiskeymusings.online. Sorry, I got a little distracted with reading some of the chats, but go to store.whiskeymusings.online and pick out something for yourself, pick out something for a friend. You can do, whatever, and support the show in the process and get free shipping. That's my gift to you until Christmas Eve by putting in the word Christmas, all capital letters, in the promo code box, and you'll get free shipping on all orders. Everything you order from the store.whiskeymusings.online store. Thank you very much for that. All right. I was waiting for this to happen. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been waiting for this to happen. And why am I waiting for this to happen? Well, because of the fact that these people, now look, I just want to go on the record. I'm going to be completely clear about this. Don't want to mince any words here. If you are an adult, meaning that you are 18 years of age or older, and you are not satisfied with the body that you are in, meaning that you determine that as a female, you actually feel more like a male or vice versa. The great thing about America is the fact that you have the freedom as an adult to go and do whatever it is that you want and can afford and pay for, provided that it's not illegal. There is no reason that if you want to change your gender, that you can't do it. There isn't any, as long as you're an adult. We kind of draw the line at kids, though, because kids themselves go through so many different phases of life and so many different things while they're growing up. This is part of the reason why a teenager or a young teenager can't be tried as an adult for capital crimes, because of the fact that they are emotional based on their growing and everything else. Okay. Their chemical imbalances happen as you grow and change. Your body changes physiologically. There is absolutely no reason that you should be able to be making those kinds of decisions, especially not being able to consult with parents. And I've been waiting for this to happen, and it has happened. Finally, it has happened. And that is the first lawsuit is filed in the U.S. to stop medical professionals from being able to trans your kid, period. And this is brought on by Carmeet Dillon. And she basically, it's on behalf of the Center for American Liberty, and also on behalf of a Chloe Cole, who is now an 18-year-old outspoken detransitioner. And she appears at rallies and speaks upon ending the medical and surgical gender transition of children. Okay. So on Thursday evening, apparently Dillon and Cole appeared on Tucker Carlson Tonight's to announce the lawsuit. Cole explained how medical professionals treated her gender dysphoria and counseled her parents. Carlson explained how gender clinics that provide medical and surgical transition to children are starting to close. Vanderbilt University Medical Center suspended its operations, and so on and so forth. But Cole, apparently, when asked by Carlson why Cole was partnering in bringing this suit, Cole responded, "It is a medical malpractice case. I want to hold the adults that put me in harm's way accountable because, what happened to me is horrible, but also it didn't only happen to me. That's the worst part." Now, Cole is a detransitioner. She's very outspoken, and she knows about the harassment and criticism that she will face. And you only need to look at her Twitter timeline on things like that. But she basically transitioned. She had her double mastectomy at, let's see, what age here? I think like 13 or 14, I think. No, 15. Sorry. She had a double mastectomy at 15 where they removed both of her breasts, and she's never going to get them back. And that, I think, is really part of the problem, is the fact that this stuff is not like something that you can switch back. It's life-altering surgery that cannot be changed. You get your breast removed, you can't put them back. You get your penis flipped inside out, you can't put it back. There is no way to come back from that kind of surgery. It's a one-way street. And to do it as an adult, again, you have the mental capacity, you have the ability to understand the choice that you're making and where you're going with it. But as a child, you don't. And so this is part of the reason why parents are so important in these kinds of things. And these, this kind of a scenario is happening more and more often where, kids. So for an example, here in the state of Washington, my daughter, who's 16 now, but at the age of 13, she could have gone and consulted with a doctor without a parent present. She still can do that. She can go and consult with a doctor, and we wouldn't be allowed to know about what's going on. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, in some of those cases, I don't necessarily, disagree with some of that. But at the same time, though, they should at least be able to consult with parents ahead of time on life-altering, irreversible surgeries and medical procedures and medicine. Again, if you're over the age of 18 or 21 or whatever it is, you're an adult, you make that choice, you make that decision, that's entirely up to you. Not going to stop you. I know of at least one whiskey warrior, won't name any names unless that person wants to say what they say, but who is transgender. And I respect that person for doing what they did. They did it for their own reasons, just like I do all of the things that I do for my own reasons. That individual can live their life if they are happy and healthy and, so on and so forth. Go live your life. That's what, this is all about. That's what freedom and liberty is all about, to pursue your desires and wants and purposes. But you can't do this to the kids. And parents, their job is to help protect their children. Now, granted, I'm not going to say that, parents are not, that some parents are not qualified to do so, because they seriously aren't. But the key here, though, is that the parent's job is to protect the kids. And if you take them out of that decision-making process, then you have a challenge here, because now the parental involvement and the parent's job of protecting their own child is taken away from them. So I'm not really surprised. I'll be interested to see how this goes, because I think this might set things up interestingly for a lot of places like California, as an example. California did that whole like trans sanctuary or whatever. So we'll just have to see what's going to happen with this. Okay. Now, to put into a little perspective, this is a little bit of a shifting gears here. You'll remember I did an episode on the constitutional sheriff. I would highly encourage you go back and listen to that program, just because it kind of points out the position and role of the sheriff within our legal system and some of the things that they've been challenged on, but have honestly been able to overcome in a lot of cases. And there's a great book that's part of the Institute on the Constitution, which I don't have right here in front of me, but it talks about the constitutional sheriff. So yeah. So anyway, I want to bring this story up to you. Now, I don't know if anybody really was paying attention on this, but Oregon has passed a state law regarding high capacity magazines, obviously in the event to try and control guns and that kind of stuff. And my position on guns is pretty simple. And I think most conservatives, especially those who are constitutionalists, understand the Second Amendment basically says, shall not infringe. Shall not infringe basically means that you can't do anything to it, that every individual has the right to keep and bear arms, and that's period. But The Oregon sheriff, there is an Oregon sheriff, and I'm actually kind of proud of this, especially coming out of Oregon. There's an Oregon sheriff that announces that her office will not actually enforce the state's new gun control law with regards to high-capacity magazines. Now, this is a sheriff that actually understands their oath of office, that they support and uphold the Constitution of the United States. And so this is just, yeah. Anyway, I'm really happy. This is Lynn County Sheriff Michelle Duncan is making it clear that her office will not be enforcing the Oregon's new high-capacity magazine ban. And so this just is going to be interesting to watch, but it's also going to show, the power of the sheriff in comparison to the federal government. So this is definitely going to be, a big thing. And of course, this is juxtaposed from the idea of the defund the police, which this next article in the Post Millennial, is let's say a side effect of the whole defund the police. I mean, we all know that police officers and police districts and precincts have been losing staff. Well, here is one example, which ironically comes from California, but one example where problems have really, really taken their toll. In this particular article in the Post Millennial, a California county called Tehama County, that's Tehama, the Tehama County Sheriff's Office will suspend daytime patrol services to its designated areas of responsibility beginning on November 20th, 2022. Now, the whole defund the police and taking away the money for the police, I get that. But the other part of this that a lot of people don't understand is the demoralization of these officers. We need to support these people just as much as we support the military members who go off to other areas to fight wars for the United States. We also need to support these people in uniform that are doing that same kind of service here at the homeland in keeping us safe. I know that there are bad apples out there. I get it. I understand that and mistakes are made. Training can sometimes be, little to non-existent. There's several problems that we definitely can't overlook. But at the same time, though, we have to respect these people who go and put on the uniform and make a choice every single day that they wake up that I am going to go out and make sure that my society is safe. So anyway, the point being is that this is based off of the whole, defund the police, hate the police, so on and so forth. You're going to see this happen a lot more often across the country. You're going to see this happen so much if they keep pushing and demoralizing our police officers and not supporting them and so on and so forth everywhere. Now, I got to back off for just a second because I want to check this next. Okay, so you may recall, and shifting gears a little bit more again, you may recall that I have talked about the lawsuit, Missouri versus the U.S. In the case where a couple of red states, Missouri in particular, and let me see, what's the other one? Louisiana. Missouri and Louisiana have charged and have put in a lawsuit that the Biden administration colluded with local, not local, but with private entities in order to take away people's right to free speech. In particular, big tech, okay, and banks too, actually. So this popped in the Epic Times. Let's see, what was the date? So it happened on November 10th, and they updated it on November 11th. But this article, let me go ahead and show you this. So the case has apparently decided that there is enough merit. The judge has decided there is enough merit to the case that it can move into what's called the discovery phase. Now, for those of you that don't remember, the way that these things usually happen is when you go into court, you bring a lawsuit. When you go into court the first time, you have to prove that you have standing. The court decides that you have standing. Then they take a look at your arguments and they basically say, okay, are these plausible or not? Are they potentially enough for us to move into the next one, the discovery phase? And yes, thank you. Redford popped this up talking about the sheriff. He's talking about episode 130 is the one that I'm talking about with the constitutional sheriff. So yes, go and take a look at that. Okay, back to this. As far as the whole idea of the Constitution is that government cannot prevent you from having free speech. Okay. That's garnered by the Constitution. Where things have gone into a bit of a gray area has been with private entities. Now, for an example, if I were to be on my show having a shirt from my regular day job and that logo showed up and I was not approved to utilize that logo on the stream, and something I said reflected badly on that corporation, and I misrepresented myself as a member of that organization, and that the inference could be made that I was speaking for that organization. This is part of the reason why you generally don't see soldiers in uniform making political statements. But if I were to go and do that, my organization could get mad at me and could basically tell me either stop that or you'll get fired. Now, I can't take them to court for that because of the fact that I am representing that organization by wearing that uniform and everything else. However, if I make it absolutely clear that I'm speaking as a private citizen, that I'm speaking as an individual, that these are my individualistic views and not associated with anything else, whether it's the corporations that I present to you as sponsors or any of those, then my individual rights are protected. And I can say pretty much just about anything within, legal reason. In this particular case, a private entity was contacted by the government as a form of an end run to try and stifle free speech of individuals. Now, in particular, what they're talking about, I believe, happens to deal with the COVID pandemic and stuff, but it could also go with the whole idea of conservatives versus Democrats or liberals and leftists being allowed to speak when conservatives are being stifled. And so this case in particular is actually going to be very, very interesting moving forward. Not just the fact that it's going into discovery, and they've already found a bunch of stuff, because if you've been tracking this, they've already found a crap load of stuff on this alone. But the whole idea of how far this thing is going to take it, my guess is that it's probably going to go potentially all the way to the Supreme Court. And this is going to open up a lot of people's eyes. This idea that big tech can just censor free speech, when they are the de facto town square nowadays because of our digital world, is part of the reason why transmitting on places like Rumble and Truth Social and GETTR and Parler in particular, and Gab are so important for conservatives such as myself versus being stifled by somebody who's barely, out of high school, maybe barely out of college, and decides that they don't like something that I'm saying. I may not be saying something that is illegal. What I might be saying is something that people don't like, but that's the whole point of free speech. Free speech is the defense of speech that you don't like, but you have to support because of you have to support that person's right to that speech, because of the fact that if you don't, then you're going to be the one next on the docket. And so this is part of the reason why this case in particular is really, really going to be important moving forward, in cases like this that are going to be important moving forward. Speaking of cases, just really quick, in case you missed it, I don't really have an article for this, but a Texas district judge, I think a district judge, has quashed Biden's education waiving. I can't think of the words right now. But the whole, forgiveness, loan forgiveness, student loan forgiveness. Biden has been quashed on that, which I said this to Steve Stiles the other day. We were talking during our whole power outage stuff, but we were talking on the phone and I said, you know what? I think the Biden administration is trying to go for the goal of being the most overturned presidential administration in United States history. I think they've put that on their goal list, and that's what they're looking for because of all the things that he is doing that is outside of the lines of the Constitution. And he keeps getting called on it. And when he does get called on it, he keeps getting slapped down because of it. Granted, it takes some time, but he still is getting slapped down. And of course, every time something like that happens, I sit and have to kind of chuckle to myself and be very proud of the fact that Donald Trump got the opportunity to install so many judges. All right. So that is pretty much the end of the show. I have gone way over. Oh my gosh, I added another 15 minutes, but of course I had to because this is in the studio. Give me a break, man. I'm feeling good. This is going on. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I do appreciate all of you, all of my Whiskey Warriors, everybody who comes here. Do me a favor. If this is your first time to the program, if this is your first video of mine that you have seen, please go and check out my other videos. And if you like what you see, head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account, and do me a favor and subscribe. I'm at, I believe it's 409. I've been kind of bouncing between like 409, 408, 410, probably because of some bots that have been coming in that have been getting axed as times. But I'm looking to hit 450. I'd really appreciate it if you could come on over and help me out. Hit 450 on Rumble. So come on over to Rumble, sign up for an account, and subscribe. And we will see you, all of you, hopefully next time, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a great night. Good night, everybody.